Okay, it's Security Weekly News, and it's episode 360. Welcome to the week of February 2024. We've got Teens Gone Wild, Nintendo, Anydesk, Rust, Google, Deepfakes, Jason Wood, and more on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News.
Business Security Weekly is live streamed and recorded on Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Each week, we address the challenges facing CISOs through our guest interviews, including former and active CISOs. Our news segment is focused on leadership and communication to better help security leaders translate and communicate security risks into business risks. Jason Albuquerque, Ben Carr, Tyler Robinson, and others add their expertise to the conversation. I'm Matt Alderman, and I hope you search for Business Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher and subscribe to download our latest content.
It's the Security Weekly News. Now in German. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, we were talking about German food before the show, so now I'm hungry. But Anydesk, speaking of German things, Anydesk is based in Germany, and they make remote access software, if you're not familiar with them. But customers were alerted on Friday that a significant security breach had occurred. Anydesk said that a security audit was triggered by suspicious activity they noticed, and they found that production systems had been compromised. That led to all security certificates being revoked, and they had to replace or remediate all these systems. Anydesk said they would be revoking any previous code signing certs for their binaries and replacing them with new ones. And they went on and said that their systems do not store private keys, tokens, or passwords which could be used, but as a precaution, they were revoking all passwords to their web portal, my.anydesk.com, and recommended that users change any passwords they had on Anydesk that might be in use elsewhere. Apparently, CrowdStrike is now investigating the incident and said more to come. Anydesk said their product is still safe to use, but you should ensure that you have the most recent version with the new code signing cert. RE Security said that an individual had been offering to sell credentials of more than 18,000 Anydesk customers on a cybercrime forum and is asking for $15,000 in crypto in exchange for the 18,000 credentials. The sale does not appear to be related to this latest breach, but were apparently obtained with an info stealer malware that had compromised some Anydesk user systems, which makes a lot of sense. And of course, that may have been used in this latest breach. And of course, I think the reason I put this article up for you was they kind of did everything right. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, all these things that they did when this breach occurred, they reported it, they revoked all these credentials and certs and everything. Sounds like at least a place you can start thinking about, are we doing all these things and are we ready to do all these things should something like this actually occur? Cybersecurity incidents in 2023 cost Clorox and Johnson Controls nearly $76 million combined. This was according to reports that they filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is called the SEC in the United States. Experts said that filings like these since the beginning of this year have increased dramatically, and that this improves transparency and provides insight into the real cost and occurrences that are related to these cybersecurity incidents. Regulatory pressure, shareholders, and changing attitudes in the C-suite have led to more disclosures about incidents. And all of you will remember those days when it was like, don't say anything, don't tell anybody, don't say anything, don't do anything, don't say anything, don't do anything, don't go anywhere, don't do anything, don't go anywhere. That's a Rick and Morty. But I mean, all of us have run into that when you went to the C-suite and you said, we should tell somebody that this happened, and they all went, absolutely not. Review your NDA, and we'll be back. Please don't contact us again. But I mean, this is apparently starting to change. And that's good for all of us, because when we see these things, when we see these reports, it helps us with our own things. Like that first story. A new SEC rule that went into effect on the 18th of December last year moves towards standardizing these disclosures related to cyber incidents, but it's not clear if the Clorox and Johnson Controls disclosures were in response to that requirement change. In their filing, Clorox said they incurred incremental expenses of up to $49 million as a result of a cyber attack back in August of last year. They said the money was spent on third-party consulting, cha-ching, including IT recovery and forensic experts, along with other professional services. Clorox said they also incurred incremental costs from the disruption of their business. Johnson Controls said that a ransomware attack last September cost them nearly $27 million, which was primarily associated with the response and remediation. And I mean, if you think this can't happen to you, it can. And you really have to start thinking about, well, we need to wipe and image every single surface in our entire organization in response to this ransomware to ensure that it's not still in there. And that can get pretty pricey pretty quick if you've ever done such tasks like that. And I have. So I think the point is increasing transparency may help us all. And it helps your shareholders be more comfortable or less comfortable. I don't know. I mean, there's always a toss up there, but it helps us all to see what's going on and how prevalent it is, as well as starting to get some data for the future, because one of the big problems with cyber insurance has been that there's very little background data, and insurance companies were terrified that they're going to write policies and they have to put all these caps on them because they don't know what the upper end is. But it also could at least let you create a slush fund in case this happens. And, third-party consulting money, I might need to run and make a few calls. Or you call me. It's fine. Teens committing cyber crimes? Say it isn't so. Not possible. Archie swatting Mrs. Grundy and Jughead's peddling rat software while Archie and Veronica exchange naughty deepfakes of Archie and Betty, which look an awful lot like Reggie and Veronica, but regardless, I got to stop writing fanfic porn. Anywho, the story says that teens are committing serious cyber crimes on a large scale and doing real damage, and that this has become a thing. I mean, when I was a teen, you red boxed a payphone so you could call your girlfriend from a sweaty booth that smelled like a hobo in July, and maybe the handset was all damp because that guy in front of you licked it before they left. Yeah, well, nobody got hurt in that. But a recent investigation resulted in the arrest of a 17-year-old in California who had done hundreds, maybe more, of swattings and bomb threats to all kinds of different groups all over the country. Wiz, a teen dating app with a really unfortunate name and probably results in a lot of confused people, was yanked from Google Play and Apple since it was being used to lure teens into sextortion scams. And hey, last month, King Bob, the handle of a 19-year-old hacker, which is a 19-year-old still a teen, I guess, technically, but King Bob was a 19-year-old hacker who was indicted for wire fraud, aggravated identity theft for being involved in $800,000 SIM swapping crypto scam, and of course, Scattered Spider, who was a big-time ransomware gang. It was apparently made up of teens who apparently were behind the MGM and Caesars Palace attacks last year. I mean, I guess I was a little surprised this wasn't already a thing with teens. I mean, who are the most tech-savvy people? Well, it's not old people, present company accepted. I mean, so I don't expect this to go away anytime soon. I mean, in my day, we had to walk uphill to school both ways and use a 300 baud dial-up modem to access the university and steal beige boxes off repair guys who were having lunch and who couldn't run real fast. But today you just hope the old interweb and you hop on there, order up a bunch of equipment, write a few lines of pathetic code in Python, and hey, you're an Uber hacker. These kids today, hey, don't touch those magazines if you aren't going to buy them, you brats. You make the pages stick together. Go away. All right. Well, Google donated $1 million on Monday to the Rust Foundation. Wow. And the goal of this money was to improve interoperability between Rust and C++. Now, C++ has had some struggles in recent years due to issues about memory safety. And of course, memory safety is the majority of the Microsoft and Google vulnerabilities. And I mean, I always told my students, you can do anything with C++, and you can. But, if you can do anything with it, it suddenly becomes a threat, and a big threat. And so there's been a lot of issues. So there have been a lot of calls for more memory, for more use of Rust, and Rust being a memory-safe alternative to C++, and to start phasing that out. Now, Mark Russinovich, who I got to interview once, super nice guy, wrote a novel, very, very cool, very intimidating because super smart, is the CTO of Microsoft. Jen Easterly, whose hand I actually got to shake recently, is the director of CISA, and others, and I'm not going to mention all the people I haven't met. You know who you are. But all of those have been endorsing Rust for a while. Now, much like when everybody was jumping off the COBOL Express and onto C, there was a lot of incentive to switch to Rust, but there's this huge negative. Converting billions of lines of legacy code is never going to be cheap, and it's never going to be easy. I mean, we can't even get out a patch in less than a year, and you want us to do what? Convert all of our legacy code to Rust from C? Yeah, that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. But, so now if there are other approaches like fallback APIs and things like that, we can start to see this. But development is a big limitation. And, have you ever walked into a room full of 51-year-old COBOL programmers and said, all right, let's learn C++? Anybody? Bueller? Anybody? No? Tough room. But Microsoft had committed $10 million last year to make Rust a first-class language in their engineering system. And the latest Google donation seems to indicate that there is some movement down this road toward a more memory-safe alternative to C++. I mean, I like Rust. It's safer, but don't start telling all those, Kerjillion C programmers that, hey, guess what? Everything you know is about the obsolete, and you're going to need to learn something new, because that's never very popular with those people. Believe me, I've stood in front of that room. I've seen the hostility. I've got, I've had the things thrown at me. I've been chased out of town, all that kind of stuff. Like, don't bring your damn C++ back here anytime soon, boy. We're a COBOL town. Get lost. Exactly. All right. I included this story because I know we have a lot of healthcare people out there in the ether. No, not using the ether, in the ether. It's not the same thing. But anyway, I was trying to come up with a good William Burroughs quote about ether, but I couldn't find it. And I was looking, and I pulled out my copy of Junkie. I pulled out my copy of Naked Lunch, and I just could not find the quote I was looking for. Oh, well. For some reason, they don't quote William Burroughs in all the classic quotation books, But anyway, the United States government has this new voluntary, in quotes, cybersecurity performance goal, which those are called CPGs by the government, by the way. So they have this voluntary CPG for healthcare, and it's voluntary. It actually is, despite the quotes. Now, basically, this article is about how these voluntary cybersecurity performance goals have this pretty common tendency to become involuntary pretty soon. And this makes sense. The government writes up white papers or has think tanks produce white papers. And this was based on a white paper, I think. And they push that out to the industry. They see, it's called run it up the flagpole and see who salutes. Well, this quote then came from Taylor Lehman in the Google Cloud office of the Chief Information Security Officer. Lehman said that the CPG was a, quote, bouncing ball on the lyrics that says what the standards and expectations are for what organizations should be working on. If you remember those old cartoons, follow the bouncing ball, that kind of stuff. But, I mean, basically saying that this is sort of what's probably going to happen. And then went on to say, quote, it may not be today, but what is on the HHS paper will most likely, and HHS is Health and Human Services, most likely become what is in the actual final rulemaking or new regulatory requirements that become law. And I mean, he's not wrong. Healthcare is a huge target. It's a huge concern for the U.S. government and the infrastructure people. And, just getting companies to, I mean, we've all been there, trying to get them to move into just basic hygiene postures is a challenge everywhere you go. But imagine in healthcare when you try to tell Dr. Welby that he has to use multi-factor authentication on that iPad. Right. Yeah, I know how that works. But so the point of this story is, look, these guidelines are probably going to become rules at some point if you're in the healthcare business. So why not review this paper now and start trying to ramp them up and trying to budget for this before your CEO is having an apoplexy because you want to implement a lot of things at once because, the law. And they say, what are our alternatives? I'm like, I don't know, like break the law. I mean, law. break the law, and they look at you like, I'm going to have to think about this. Like, oh my God, I'll be on the yacht. Don't call me. All right. Google has agreed to pay $350 million to settle a lawsuit years after a security lapse caused the personal data of users on Google Plus to be exposed. Google recently settled another lawsuit, and there's plenty more out there that were brought. This other lawsuit was brought by Chrome users who had their data tracked, even though they were using private mode. Wait, what? They track incognito mode? I may need a minute. Don't click that. Just don't leave that alone. You don't want to look at that. No, I'm sorry. No, please don't look at that. COBOL fanfic porn is not a thing, I swear. But anyway, if you bought Google stock from 23rd of April 2018 to 30 April 2019, you would be able to apply for a share of that $350 million settlement. They should have notified you already, but maybe you threw it away or maybe it went in your spam folder. So if you are eligible, be sure you get your cut, which will probably be $9.83 and a couple of old Subway tokens. But, nevertheless, some law firms are really going to clean up on these. Deepfakes. And I know that Jason is going to talk about a recent deepfake issue in a bit. And so we'll let him talk about that. But this report said that deepfakes could shatter confidence in face biometric authentication solutions for around 30% of companies by 2026 per Gartner. I'm not sure how you measure shattered confidence in 2026, Gartner, but okay, if you say so. I do believe you. But if you don't know what they are, deepfakes are, of course, when they use AI to plaster my face on a male stripper. And I admit it would be hard to tell the difference. I mean, maybe you could. I'm not sure. And then you used my male stripper deepfake to do terrible things with my image. Yeah, deepfake, right. I mean, a deepfake of Taylor Swift was recently making all kinds of headlines for being naked on X or something like that. So if you could basically fake someone's face and you can definitely fake their voice, you've seen sneakers. Come on. I mean, my word is my bond, Marty. But some of the things from James Bond and Mission Impossible and all these things that we've always seen start to kind of come to life. I mean, like the eyeball and Blade Runner and all this sort of stuff. I mean, regardless, the report says that deepfake fraud and biometric authentication bypass has always been a concern, and it always has. I mean, even way back when sneakers were made, and there's a poster of sneakers in here somewhere. But, I immediately asked when they brought this into the bank, they had a thumbprint reader. And my question was, if I cut Bill's thumb off and I just carried it around on a string around my neck, and of course the engineer said, that won't work. There's a temperature sensor. If it's not 36.5 degrees, no luck. And I said, microwave burrito, anyone? And notice I don't work there any longer. But in 2021 in China, a bunch of criminals were able to purchase high-def photographs of faces to create deepfakes that fool the Chinese government facial recognition tech, which allowed the theft of $75 million by generating fake tax invoices. And I guess they got into the system by, faking the face. On Fido said that there's been a 3,000% increase in deepfake fraud attempts in 2023, and companies are increasingly using biometric authentication methods. So that all goes hand in hand. GetUp said that 79% of companies had been using this since about 2022. So kind of like a man in a meat suit trying to break into Bob's Dingo storage facility, it's kind of a perfect storm that very likely could result in, a perfect storm. Yeah. On that note, it's possibly Jason. It could be Aaron posing as Jason, or it could be Pee Wee Herman's body with Weird Al Yankovic's face and Tiny Tim's voice pretending to be Jason. Regardless, please welcome Jason Wood, who's going to talk more about deepfakes. Hi, Jason.
Hey, Doug. Or is it really me? Who knows?
Or is it any of us?
Yeah, I mean, let's pick up on this idea of the deepfakes and run with it a little bit further to maybe a little bit more, to a more personal level in how it can be used. So I'm sure everybody's heard of the email scams where, an email gets spoofed pretending to be an exec at an organization and saying, oh my goodness, we need to transfer this money over here and keep quiet about it because something really sensitive about this is going on and we got to get it done by like 2:00 today. And And, maybe it's an email compromise and they're actually sending it from the person's account. Maybe it's spoofed, who knows? But the person falls victim to that pressure and transfers the money out. So, now the attackers have apparently decided to step this up a bit. And, the scams have gotten around that enough that people are aware of this. So the attackers have upped their game. Now, I found this story originally on CNN, but it was actually covered on a number of other news outlets as well. In this case, the victim works at a firm in Hong Kong with offices around the world, and they received an email from someone that appeared to be their CFO, who was located in the UK, and the email is instructing them to send 2 million Hong Kong dollars, or about $25 million US, to a number of different bank accounts locally there in Hong Kong. And the victim thought, this looks like a phishing message, so I can imagine them doing a little bit of pushback on this. And finally, they get invited to a video conference. So they join the conference, and they see their CFO there on the screen, along with a number of other people. And they're all talking, and they look like the people that they recognized. They sound like them. The problem was none of them were. And apparently some of these the other folks on the call were also senior officers in the company, at least according to The Guardian. They made that comment. So as you look at these articles, they give different details about the scam and what happened here. So they're hearing these people talk. They see them talk, and we're not even getting into biometrics or anything like that. This is like, hey, George, how's it going, right? And so the victim is convinced that, okay, this looks like it's legitimate. I'm hearing them tell me to do it. I'm being basically ordered by my CFO. All right. So they made the transactions. They made 15 different transactions, sending out to 5 different banks in the area, sending out 200 million Hong Kong dollars. So the victim didn't figure out what had gone wrong until they decided, let me just follow up with the home office, make sure everything's okay here. And that's when they found out that they were the point of attack and they had been tripped up by the attackers here and been scammed. And I really can't imagine. I mean, can you imagine the sinking feeling you would have in your stomach to find this out, that, oh, crap, I did this. They tried to be aware of what's going on. They didn't fall for the email, and it really wasn't until they saw the person tell them, you need to go do this, and everything sounds legit. The police said that the fake people on the call were likely based on videos that were already publicly available. They go on the news and talk about something, or they're speaking at a conference or what have you. And apparently this isn't the first time this has happened. Now, I did read one article where somebody said that the Hong Kong police said this is the first time this has happened to a company in Hong Kong. But at the same news, a different article said that at the same news conference that the Hong Kong police announced that they had arrested 6 people in connection with similar scams. So maybe they did it against companies in other countries or areas of the world. I'm not sure. But and then I also wondered about the victim's level of interaction during this call. Did they just sit there silently because they have all of these senior people on the call, and it sounds like this person, they had the ability to make the transactions, but they weren't an officer of the company or anybody particularly senior. It sounds like they may have just sat there quietly. At least that's what impression I got from one article, and just kind of listened to what's going on. But I did read another one where they said on the call they agreed to make the transfer. So was there some back and forth here, which is be pretty wild to generate that on the fly to respond to questions or comments from the person that they're talking to. Definitely would be more impressive than a pre-recorded teleconference, if you will. And the victim is just expected to shut up and do what they're told, right? Okay. Bright side here, I guess our security awareness training actually is having some positive impact on people. The person recognized that, hey, this looks like a phishing attack, or something here is out out of the norm, and it's having enough success that the scammers decided they need to up their game. They needed to spend the time and the money and effort into creating these deepfake videos and set up this video conference and have this prepared so that they can use that as an extra bit of credibility to try and push this person, their intended victim, into making the transaction. Unfortunately, that improvement, has the knock-on effect that, well, they've adapted, and in a way that few organizations and people are probably really ready to deal with. I mean, we're used to talking to people now on video conferences and stuff like that, and I'm very comfortable with that myself. Talking with my team members around the world, and here you go. You got a video of your CFO telling, a teleconference, right? Telling you, here's what you need to go do. Go do this, which, like, the implied threat. If you don't, you lose your job. So go do it. So yeah, I mean, I expect this is going to get to the point where nobody can reasonably expect that they, who they're talking to is real or not if this starts to become too prevalent, and that is really pretty uncomfortable situation to be in. As to defenses for these types of scams, they're going to keep pushing people to make transfers to places that money's not supposed to go, for transactions that never really existed, for demand, like bills or invoices that never really existed. The only thing I could think of really is looking at the financial teams, looking at their procedures and codifying them in some way that one person is never able to make these types of transactions, at least not without other people stepping in to do their part to authorize the transaction, verify things, and make sure it's legitimate. And having some procedures here that this is how this flow works, even if an executive comes and says, hey, we need to do this. Okay, great. Here's the way this needs to flow so that we get everything checked and taken care of along the way. And then the leaders themselves make sure that they follow it and don't go and say, hey, well, this is an exception this time. Make it happen. Ultimately, of course, that's up to the finance folks to figure out. For us, it's up to us to pass the information along and let them know that, hey, here's some really bad news. They're getting even more clever, and now a Zoom call, maybe with somebody who doesn't actually exist. So I do think that maybe we need to be a little careful about being too prescriptive in what they need to do and how we present this information to the finance team, standing up there and saying, here's how these attacks are being done, and here's exactly what you needed to do to defend against this, and they will do this, and then you'll do that. I think if we get into that, then they'll start to tailor their responses and their procedures to that scenario specifically, and then when the attacker does something else, well, we're not ready for that. So, it's probably best to put this out there as, hey, here's what their goal is. They're trying to get people to issue fraudulent transactions, trying to dupe somebody into doing this, and they've done it via email. They've upped their game now to video calls. Who knows what they're going to do next, but what we do need to do is have procedures to provide some checks here to make sure that we're not issuing these transactions and that nobody is finding themselves in the situation of being tricked into to creating the transactions and pushing them through when they had every reason to believe that, yeah, this was legit because, George, you told me to do it, so I did it. Except you didn't, because it was a deep fake. And so, yeah, it's a great example of how the difficulty level can be radically ramped up and make even an aware employee get tripped up by this. So interesting read, something to look at, definitely to send along. Now let's see if we can get Doug to describe his European dining experiences and recommendations, kind of riff on what we were talking about before. And I know it's not German food, but how about that haggis, Doug?
Yum, yum. Bring on the haggis. I wish you could get it in the United States. It's quite tasty, despite being a boiled sheep stomach filled with boiled other sheep parts. But it's actually okay. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things people think it's going to be awful, but it is a little, don't just close your eyes and dive right in, like eating that big bowl of fish eyes.
keep in mind, he called it gunk
Well,
in our call before the meeting, before the podcast.
I used to cook this stuff called glop all the time for my friends, and they loved it. It wasn't the most attractive thing, and Gordon Ramsay would have been like, "Oh, you donkey," but it tasted good. And haggis is like that. Don't worry about what it looks like. Just eat it. I mean, I remember I had this big platter of sautéed pig stomachs or something once in China, and it really looked awful, but it tasted just dandy. So, you got to just close your eyes and dive right in there, and who knows what you'll experience. So keep those eyes closed and that mouth open. That sounds really bad. No, okay, don't go there. Like, okay, I didn't say that. Withdrawn, retracted, edited out. Yep, that didn't happen. It wasn't me. It was a deep fake. It was a deep fake me. Thank you, Jason. And finally, Gary Bowser is a famous, sort of famous console hacker. Well, sort of a hacker. Bowser pled guilty for his role in helping Team Executor. I don't know how to say it. But the plea meant that he owed Nintendo $14.5 million in civil and criminal penalties for the console accessories that Executor sold, which basically allowed people to pirate things with their Nintendos. Yeah, Nintendo gets pretty serious about that. You don't really want to mess with them. I remember them coming after people for music and all, or it was Sony, but Sony owns Nintendo. And, Sony was coming after students. And, I had these poor students calling in going, I just got this letter. This is like $8,000 because I downloaded some music. And I'm like, you do. But anyway, Bowser got caught in this thing because they were making these accessories which allowed for piracy involving Nintendo consoles. Now, Bowser was released last year after serving 14 months of a 40-month sentence plus 16 months of pretrial detention. It's not the sentence that gets you. It's the pretrial detention every time, according to my friends who've been in custody. I'm not even making that up. I have some friends who were in federal prison, and they said it was the pretrial detention that really sucked. But I was like, don't you get bail? I've watched television law shows. Come on. But anyway, Bowser said he was earning $1 an hour. That sounds pretty good for counseling prisoners on suicide watch, and had been paying Nintendo $25 a month while in prison, and said he had managed to pay off $175 so far. But Nintendo will likely continue to be able to take 20 to 30% of his gross income until, if ever, the $14.5 million is actually paid back plus interest. So it's like student loans. You never pay it back, and then they pass it on to your kids. Sorry, honey. But Bowser claims he was simply a patsy for the group and that he did not work on the actual products that were doing the piracy, that he just did stuff like product testing, promotion, and website coding. So it's kind of like saying, I didn't rob the bank. I just drove the car to the bank and away. So I'm kind of like an Uber driver, really. But anyway, Bowser got arrested in the Dominican Republic in 2020, and the other members of the group, which have yet to face trial, incidentally, Max Luarn is still living in France, and you know how that goes. It's, him and Roman Polanski having a good old time. And Yuanning Chen is still at large, so who knows where he is. But Bowser says he's relying on a GoFundMe page for rent while he looks for a job, but he's still tinkering away with old school TI calculators. Look, use HP or you go home, TI people. Come on. But I guess the point of putting up this story was it is an interesting read. It does sometimes show you that crime may not pay and that it may actually cost you. So, keep that in mind. And that's the news. I will be live at the Millennium Alliance CISO event at the JW Marriott in Atlanta this month on the 26th and 27th. So if you're going to be there, be sure and stop by for drinks because they're actually free. And so you can buy me one. But anyway, thank you, Jason. And I will see you Friday on the Security Weekly News.